Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Jim Daly and from Daly Manufacturing. I'm here talking to you today about the microbiome and obesity. These are two of the most important topics individually and enormously important together. And I hope that you'll enjoy what we have to say. Before we go further, actually, we'll point out one study that recently came out, very recently, that was kind of a blockbuster study in the journal Cell Metabolism. They found that people responded to exercise according to their microbiome. In other words, if they did not have the correct microbiome, basically they didn't get the benefits from exercise that other people did. And it's a pretty detailed study, but essentially your microbiome, biotype, really determines how you respond to exercise, whether you get the benefits for metabolism, particularly for diabetes from it. And so that was a very interesting new study that just sort of broke ground. Something really new is how it did it. So if you're really interested in that kind of research, it's pretty in-depth, it's pretty technical, but it is very good. And I'll be happy to share that with you. If you want to give me an email or call here, be happy to let you have that, send you a copy of it. Now, moving on, we're going to be talking today about one of our new products at the end of the talk, Colon Active. It's a symbiotic, it's got gut bacteria and the prebiotic inulin in it, not insulin. All are probiotic bacteria that can colonize the gut and provide ongoing benefits for months to years. It's especially good for digestive health and for metabolic health, but these bacteria are good for a lot of things actually. And so we'll just say that for now, make a few announcements. First of all, a lot of you have been seeing us on Facebook. And really, I encourage you to like our Facebook page. That'll make it a lot easier for you to see new things that we put up. We don't do it all the time. You won't get bombarded with stuff on Facebook from us. But what we do put there, I think you will find very interesting usually. I don't put stuff on Facebook unless I have something worthwhile to put on Facebook. Let me put it that way. I don't just bombard you with buy from us type information. But I do try to get stuff on there that I think will benefit you. Also, if you're listening to this on YouTube right now, you might want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then when you do that, click the notify button. And when I give these talks, you'll be notified and you can watch them. I think that's a very valuable thing for you to do, because I really put a lot of effort into these talks to bring you new information in a fair amount of depth so that you can really educate yourself and make informed choices about your diet and your supplements. Another thing I wanted to mention, this is February, Halloween. I keep saying wrong words here, don't I? Valentine's is coming up. I'm getting laughed at here, folks. These are not kind people that work for me. Anyway, with Valentine's Day, you might want to be at the top of your game feeling really great, men and women. And we have Vitality for Men and Vitality for Women. And these are really designed to help your hormonal health and make you, feel at the top of your game and be really energetic, healthy people and enjoy life. And they're good all year, but we thought especially right now is a good time to do it. And a lot of times in the middle of the winter like this, kind of need something to perk you up anyway. So give those products a try. We have a lot of people that really like them and benefit from them. Well, like I said, we're going to be talking about the microbiome, those little beasties as I think it was Leeuwenhoek described them, that live down in your gut, and what they can do for you. Now, obesity is probably one of the greatest tragedies and one of the greatest challenges of our generation. There's nothing that I think can compare with it as far as the impact it has on people. When I was in Walmart shopping, I think it was the week before last, there was a very obese woman, wheelchair bound. They're looking at cereals. And she, asked me very nicely with a very sweet, nice voice, could you get that down from the top shelf? She was wanting some Raisin Bran. And so, of course, I was happy to do that. And I probably shouldn't have, but I kind of noticed what was in her shopping cart. But she wasn't making bad food choices. And yet here she was, she could barely get into that wheelchair. She was absolutely, amazingly much more obese than the woman in the picture here. But you look at her face, she looked rather pretty, probably in her 40s. But this has a really profound effect on her life. And, to be wheelchair bound at that age is a tragic thing. And we really don't understand yet, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, why this is happening so much. But it is, and it's really impacting the health and happiness of people all over the world. Now, this is kind of a map that will show you year to year the changes in obesity, self-reported obesity in this case among U.S. adults. The green areas, 20 to 5% obesity rate, yellow 25 to 30, the orange 30 to 35% of the people, adults, are obese, more than 35% in the burgundy, the dark red. And you can see just each year how this grows. It's amazing. If this were anything but obesity, people would be going nuts about the spread of this disease, and it is really a disease. But, people associate it with just, well, they don't eat right, and, that's their fault. That's probably partly true, but not 100% true. And why this is occurring at this kind of rate, we really don't know. Lots of people have ideas about that, but scientists don't really know. But if you look at where we are right now, well, this was in 2013 and 14, actually. More than almost 3/4 of the population was either overweight or obese. But there is that much now. And some people believe it's not that bad just to be a little bit overweight if you're in that category. But that's really wrong. Being overweight is bad for you. Overweight and obesity both lead to serious disease. We have become so accustomed to being unhealthy that it seems normal to us now. And we don't even think about it a lot of times. And when I say unhealthy, that's, being overweight is part of that. And when I say overweight for the U.S., for Caucasians and for blacks both, that's a BMI of between 25 and 30 is overweight. Over 30 is obese. Now for Asians, it's even less. Usually they consider anybody with a BMI in Asia over 25 to be obese. And that's sort of a difference in how they deposit fat and how they respond to fat. And so it happens much more easily and much more quickly in Asians. But still, you can see from the numbers that the obesity rate and overweight rate has really skyrocketed. It's an epidemic. There's no other word for it. Diseases associated with overweight and obesity, to name some of the major ones, increases all cause of death, mortality. High blood pressure is intricately linked to it. Most people with high blood pressure could go back to normal if they just lost weight. There's exceptions to that, but that would be true of most people who have hypertension. It's associated with high LDL, low HDL, and high levels of triglycerides, something we refer to as dyslipidemia. Definitely with type 2 diabetes, as with hypertension, most people with type 2 diabetes, if it hasn't progressed too far where they really lost the ability to secrete insulin, most type 2 diabetes can be reversed with weight loss. It's that simple. Coronary heart disease is intricately linked to the diabetes, dyslipidemia, and the obesity itself, as is stroke. Gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis is linked to obesity. Part of that is just the stress on the joints for carrying around all that weight. Sleep apnea and breathing problems, huge problem, and that is a leading cause of depression as well as some of these other diseases. You know, poor sleep is really very detrimental to your health, and we've talked about that in the past. Some cancers, endometrial, breast, colon, kidney, gallbladder, and liver cancers, low quality of life, mental illness related to obesity, depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders, body pain, and difficulty with physical functions. So there's just a lot of things that just really pile on you when you're overweight and obese. It really affects your quality of life, your health, your lifespan, and how long you can enjoy living your life. Well, what are the causes of obesity? And like I said, we don't really know. I gave one company I know of has a product that's supposed to help with what they call endocrine disruptors. Those things are like BPA, that that's the plastics. They don't have it too much anymore, but endocrine disruptors basically bind to insulin receptors, and they cause your endocrine system, your hormones, not to work correctly. So you can see here over about a span of about 8 years there, I don't have bars for each year, the increase in obesity rate, and you can see increase in the use of the endocrine, or the availability of the endocrine disruptors, the ones that are actually present in our environment, the numbers of them. And you can see a clear trend, except for one problem. That's the wrong slide. That's actually the use of mobile phones on that red line. The blue ones are things. I tricked you, actually. And the reason I did that is because you can find lots of things like this that have associations like that. You could look, you could put that same graph and you could put in there the availability of organic foods, because over that same amount of time, the amount of organic foods available in the supermarkets and other places have really increased. So has obesity. But we know that organic foods don't do that. So we don't know that the endocrine disruptors don't do that. Maybe the use of cell phones and things has an effect, but we don't know that. But just looking at associations like that doesn't tell you that that really is what the problem is. And that's why I wanted to throw that at you a little bit and trick you a little bit, because you'll see this happening all the time in marketing. They'll say, well, look at this increase, and if this is causing it, and if you do this, well, that'll probably just go right back down. Well, most of the time it won't. Those are not good ways. You can't rely on that kind of association data to show cause and effect, but people try to do that all the time in marketing. So don't fall for that. They've got to have more than just those kind of associations. Well, let's talk about fat itself a little bit. All fats are not created equal. There are many types of fat, depending on what the fat is and very importantly, where it's located in the body. You have the subcutaneous fat. Now, if you look at this person, CT scan, I think it is, you'll see all around, look at outside of his legs, up his sides, between his arm and sides. You'll see lots of white there. That's all fat. That fat up there is subcutaneous fat, and it really doesn't do that much harm to you. In fact, some people will say there's some benefit to it. However, if you look in the middle part, there's an almost heart-shaped big blob there. That's your visceral fat in your gut. That's your bad fat. That's really what causes diabetes and other things. That's really throws your metabolism off. Now, there's also liver-associated fat, and that's a subset of the fat that you see in the middle there. That's even worse. And the worst fat is associated with the pancreas, the pancreatic fat. That fat really increases your risk of diabetes enormously. So where this fat is located makes a big difference. But just keep in mind, when you hear the word abdominal fat, visceral fat, these are the fats that are really going to cause you serious health problems. Intramuscular fat isn't great either. It sort of can interfere with the uptake of insulin and the action of insulin in muscles, which you really don't want. But there again, the visceral fat is really the ones that are the most harmful. Now, Japanese wrestlers, the sumo wrestlers, you can see that this guy is big and fat. But the competitive wrestlers in Japan maintain a body weight by consuming between 5,000 and 6,000 calories per day. They have a BMI of about 55, which is hugely what you'd call normally morbidly obese. However, they train so much, they don't have a lot of visceral fat when they're doing that training. Now, exercise seems to specifically reduce that visceral fat that's the most damaging. These guys have a large amount of subcutaneous fat, but very little visceral fat, and no metabolic syndrome or insulin resistance until they retire and discontinue training. And then they go down pretty quickly. So that's just something to bear in mind. That really makes a big difference, that exercise does, in where your fat goes. And we do know that the visceral fat is very damaging. The most direct evidence of that is from surgical removal. Removal of subcutaneous fat by liposuction has no metabolic benefits at all. In fact, it may be harmful metabolically. I don't recommend liposuction. It might make you look a little bit better, but you know, if you take away fat cells there's no place for the fat to be deposited very easily, except in the visceral fat areas, and that's really what you don't want. So I think liposuction is kind of a risky thing to do. Visceral fat removal surgically, however, does reduce insulin resistance. It normalizes that. It normalizes plasma insulin levels and hyperinsulinemia. And it basically reverses the type 2 diabetes in people. So we know for certain, and you can see the three, down at the bottom, there's 3 references there that if you want to check this out for yourself, you can certainly go look that up. And I'll point out that throughout this presentation, I have a lot of references, and you're always welcome to go on YouTube and look through these slides and look them up yourself and study, because it's really helpful to do that and really understand the problems. But you know, we know that that the visceral fat is what really does the damage. Some good news about visceral fat, however, it is very metabolically active compared to subcutaneous fat. When people start to lose weight, visceral fat loss occurs preferentially over subcutaneous fat loss. So you use it actually a little bit faster, not a lot, but a little bit faster. People will losing weight will often experience cardiovascular benefits very quickly before you're losing much of their total body fat. And probably it's for that reason. They're losing that visceral fat more rapidly. And that part's going down, even though it's a relatively small percentage of their total fat. It's the one that's doing the damage, and they're benefiting from losing that. More good news is that since people lose visceral fat preferentially, it would seem they would also regain it preferentially. But in reality, subjects who have been monitored for visceral fat during fat loss and regain actually gain back subcutaneous fat preferentially. So, you know, it's losing fat and regaining it. You actually end up a little bit better off doing that. Now, people fuss about the yo-yo diets. You've heard that, people losing and gaining weight. That may not be so bad, because each time you lose weight, you get rid of more of the visceral fat. You don't gain it back as much when you do regain weight. And there are people now saying that the yo-yo diet actually isn't that bad. And I think they're right for that reason. Now, what about the microbiome and obesity? Well, it seems like the microbiome gets involved in almost everything. Fecal implant studies have shown that giving fecal implants from lean animals or people to obese animals or a person will result in weight loss for the obese person. Now, most of us don't like the idea of a fecal implant. You know, it's basically taking feces from a healthy person, usually a young person with a good microbiome, and mixing it up and giving them an enema with it. And it puts all the good bacteria that other person has into you. And it really has a lot of health benefits in a lot of people. It's turned around people with mental health problems, with obesity things. It's not real popular just because it's something that, you know, we just don't like the idea of doing it, to be honest. And people in the room here are making faces when I talk about it. It's not something that we like, but it's something that works. So we know that the microbiome can make profound differences in our health, mental health and physical health. It appears that people, when they become obese, they make adaptations in a lot of ways to obesity. They develop a, quote, obese microbiome. They develop hormonal responses that are basically appear to be geared to maintaining the new body weight. It takes a long time when you start losing weight to actually get where those hormones aren't working against you. And that's why people have such a hard time maintaining weight loss, because the hormones, the microbiome, they're all telling the person they need to get more weight. They're lost weight. And the body senses that as a danger sign under these circumstances. Well, the microbiome interacts with almost everything in the body, it seems like. We can start up there at the top. Antibiotics affect the microbiome, obviously. Something that'll kill bacteria is going to kill bacteria, whether they're good ones or bad ones. Hormones interact both ways. The hormones in your body affect the microbiome, but the microbiome actually releases hormones or sends out signals for the endocrine cells to release hormones. The same thing works with the immune system. The brain is very much affected by and affects the microbiome. A lot of neurotransmitters are actually made in the gut and made by gut bacteria in some cases, and released and find their way to the brain. Stress has a big effect on both the microbiome and problems with your microbiome causes stress. So you see that we have these reciprocal actions that can really set us up for problems. HPA axis, social status, in utero environment works both ways. When we were very young, Inflammation works both ways. Obesity works both ways. And that's really what we're talking about today, and that's very profound. Adipose tissue releases hormones that affect the microbiome, but then the microbiome releases hormones that can stimulate hunger or satiety, either one, and affect how you react to your environment and food. Well, energy intake, diet, genetics, liver itself, all of these things interact with the microbiome and it with them in most cases. So, are gut microbes responsible for post-dieting weight rebound? And that was a name of a recent, fairly recent paper in the journal Cell Metabolism, and their conclusion was yes, it was. Again, in future microbiology, post-dieting weight gain, the role of persistent microbiome changes. That is, as you get more obese, your microbiome changes and makes semi-permanent changes that are really geared for somebody with a obesity problem. And it helps you maintain obesity, or in most cases it blocks your efforts to get rid of obesity. And then again, like we said, this other study said that yo-yo dieting is better than none. At least you're changing that profile a little bit. And just another fairly recent one, the human microbiome and obesity, a good paper to look up and read sometime. We won't go into it too deeply, but it's basically concluding that it's moving beyond associations. We mentioned the association study where I tricked you with that little graph, but here they're saying that we really moved beyond just association studies with the microbiome and obesity link. And we're really starting to see cause and effect. And there's a lot of papers that are showing that, and we'll talk about some of them in a little bit. Well, we have a product named Colon Active. Actually, it does a lot of things, and the bacteria in it do a lot of things. But besides being really great for your digestion and working on digestive problems, these bacteria are ones that have been shown in good studies to actually prevent obesity, each one of them. And I don't say that you should take high doses of any one of these bacteria. I think that's the wrong approach to the microbiome. What you really want is to have lots of good bacteria, but a wide variety of bacteria in your colon, because one of the most important things we find is that bacterial diversity is the most important thing for having a healthy microbiome. You should have about 1,000 different bacteria in your gut, different species. Besides that, there are what we call eukaryotes, small microbial animals, you might say. Also, there's yeast and molds that can be very beneficial. Also, there's what they call archaea, and that's a kind of life form that we don't understand real well. But when you hear about microbes that eat up plastic, for instance, in the ocean, those are archaea. They're a very primitive life form, and they're there, and they're probably doing a lot for us there, but we don't know what exactly. They're not as well known, but they're a very interesting area that I would like to see more research on. But one of the first ingredients in our Colon Active is Lactobacillus Acidophilus. It's been shown to prevent obesity in high-fat diet-fed mice. And you can see the reference there in Journal of Endocrinology, a very good journal. And so it's pretty well established. It's also been shown to lower body weight and increase microbiome microbial diversity as part of a blend of probiotic bacteria in humans. So not just in mice or rats, but also in people. It's been shown as part of a blend of bacteria to affect body composition in a very favorable way. Lactobacillus plantarum has also been shown to decrease obesity in rats and mice and in humans as a part of a probiotic blend. So it's been in a number of different species it's shown to be effective. And there again, we've got good scientific studies. The one on the bottom is a 12-week double-blind randomized placebo-controlled study in humans. Great information there, great benefit from that particular bacteria. Also, we see that in rats it both decreases obesity and uric acid lowering effect. So that's something we don't see often, that a lot of people might be very interested in. Bacteria bifidum, I'll just read from this one study here. It was pretty good. Gut microbiota is associated with adiposity markers, and probiotics may impact specific genera. The purpose of this study, it has been suggested that restoring gut microbiota alterations with probiotics represents a potential clinical target for the treatment of gut microbiota-related diseases, such as obesity. Here we apply 16S rDNA, that's the way you usually characterize bacteria, microbiota profiling to establish which bacteria in the human gut are associated with obesity and cardiometabolic risk factors, and to evaluate whether probiotic supplementation modulates gut microbiota. Well, the conclusion was ecosystem-wide analysis of probiotic use effects on the gut microbiota revealed a genera-specific influence, and one of which represents a promising novel target for obesity treatment, and that was using bacteria bifidum with a few other bacteria. So there again, we've got really good data for people using it for decreasing obesity. Bifidobacterium lactis has been shown to decrease waist circumference, lower BMI, decrease visceral fat, decrease blood pressure, and HOMA-IR, which is a measure of insulin resistance, and increase Akkermansia species. Wow, that's a mouthful, but that's a lot of different things that it did in this study. There again, this is in humans, in people, not in rats and mice. The Akkermansia species, that's one we don't sell as a probiotic. It's not easily grown outside of a human, but we don't see that yet in supplements. However, it's one that's very important for maintaining the integrity of the gut lining, and it can have a pretty profound effect on how our gut health, and has been associated itself with maintaining proper body weight. So it's a very good one, and this increases it, but you can't take it as a probiotic, at least not yet. Bifidobacterium longum, and these are all things in the colon active product. That's why I've got the picture there beside it. It's in colon active. First study there that we're mentioning, Lactobacillus plantarum and Bifidobacterium longum simultaneously alleviate high-fat diet-induced colitis, endotoxemia, liver steatosis, and obesity in mice. That was in nutrition research in just last year, about 6 months ago. Then another one in people, modulation of gut microbiota from obese individuals by in vitro by in vitro fermentation of citrus pectin in combination with Bacteria longum. Okay, so there they got the really great results by combining the Bifidobacterium longum with a food ingredient, this case citrus pectin. But that's where you really get your best benefits, when you get these good bacteria, but you also get these good plant-derived fibers that the bacteria just love to eat. And that really is a powerful combination when you can do that. Lactobacillus gasseri. Lactobacillus gasseri supplementation reduces the visceral fat accumulation and weight circumference in obese adults. That was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in the journal Medicinal Food. It's the actually the journal that I edit. It's a very good journal, and I worked on that paper. It's great, you know, it really works. And then you can say right below it, another human trial on gasseri, regulation of abdominal obesity by probiotics, and then Lactobacillus gasseri in adults with obese tendency in a randomized controlled trial. That was in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition. So, and this gasseri, Lactobacillus gasseri, has other studies in addition to these. This was just two. This got more human trials for obesity than anything else I've seen, actually. Finally, Lactobacillus rhamnosus is the last one we have in colon active. The effect of Lactobacillus rhamnosus supplementation on weight loss and maintenance in obese men and women. British Journal of Nutrition. There again, it was very effective. And a second study, also in people, 24-week double-blind study, found that it was very effective in women, particularly, although both genders benefited. The conclusion of that study, the present study shows that the Lactobacillus rhamnosus formulation helps obese women to achieve sustainable weight loss. You can't beat that. Now, if you take colon active, are you going to just immediately start losing a lot of weight? I'm not sure. I mean, some people did in these studies, but what I think is really important is that you set up a microbiome in your gut that helps you maintain a healthy weight. You'll probably over time start losing some weight. It's not a rapid process, and it takes a while for your gut to adjust to that. Changes in gut bacteria happen slowly, and it's over a period of time. So I'm not really suggesting that just taking daily colon active will make you lose weight. I'm not sure that it will, but it will help you get into a physical state that allows you to maintain and lose a little bit of weight at least. And then I think for most people, if they will use some of the other techniques out there for weight loss, and I personally believe that one of the best is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is where you take a period of time that you don't eat anything. You might drink water, a little bit of juice if you have problems with blood sugar and maintaining them. But you do these short-term fasts once or twice a week. You might skip 2 meals in a row. That would be about a 12-hour fast, or that'd be a 24-hour fast, actually. Some people do it where they just limit their eating from about 8 o'clock in the morning to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't eat anything in between. So they go from late afternoon till late morning throughout the night and don't eat. That's another way of doing it. But these intermittent fastings apparently do the body a lot of good besides weight loss. Actually, they've shown cardiovascular benefit from intermittent fasting that is not even associated with weight loss apparently. So, you know, it's a good way and healthy way of doing it. A lot of weight loss programs are not healthy. A lot of them use a lot of stimulants and things like that that may not be good for your overall health. Intermittent fasting appears to be good for your health if you can tolerate doing it. Some people have blood sugar regulation problems, and it may not be that they can, but if you can do it, it's a good way of losing weight. But I think the first thing you really need to do is start establishing a gut microbiome that can help you with the process. You do all this fasting, intermittent fasting or otherwise, and lose weight, you really don't want to gain it back. So you want to have a body, a microbiome that will help you maintain the weight. Remember that we talked about in the beginning that persistent changes in the microbiome really work against us for weight loss. And so we want to start reversing that process right away and put ourselves in a place where we can. And I think Colon Active is a good start on that. You also want to eat a plant-based diet with lots of fiber. We know that cooking food reduces a prebiotic benefit of a lot of foods, particularly fruits and vegetables when they're cooked. There's good research for that I have here. I didn't talk about it in depth tonight, but you want to eat a lot of raw fruits and vegetables. The grains, of course, you probably want to cook, and that seems to be okay with grains. But these kind of foods will really help you maintain a good microbiome as well as lose weight. And so I think we're finished for tonight. If we have questions in here, I'll take them and be happy to discuss them with you. Does anyone here have questions? If anybody is online and listening and they have questions, I'm not sure if you can get to us and ask them or not. Yeah, you can do that. What, will you type it in? Okay, yeah, you can type in on your computer and ask questions if you have them. But does anyone, first of all, here have questions about this topic? Did you understand it? We don't have questions here. Do we have questions from people online? Okay, no questions, so that's fine. I hope that means that everybody understood and benefited from this talk tonight. I think it's, you know, it's just, you can't overestimate the importance of this issue of obesity, and it's a worldwide problem. We think of it as a USA problem in this country, but we don't have the highest obesity rates in the world. Saudi Arabia has higher than we do. Mexico has about the same. Sometimes when they measure, take the surveys there, they are actually higher than us. Sometimes they're slightly lower. But they track about the same as the United States. If you adjust in Asian countries for their definition of obesity compared to ours, they're not far behind, actually. So this is a worldwide problem, and it's getting worse, as you can see, all the time. So with something that you need to deal with, it's going to affect your life profoundly if you don't. And I hope that you can. And thank you very much for joining us.